All right, so here I am fussing around with my headphones and doing my first live stream. I guess it's sort of my first live stream, and it is Thursday afternoon, just past noon, and I've got a couple minutes here before my next client meeting. So a couple things that I've been doing today that I think might be useful and interesting for you to think about with your business. So one of the things I was doing is following up a podcast that I listened to yesterday. It was a Tim Ferriss podcast, and if you haven't checked out his podcasts, they're really awesome. Tim Ferriss, Ferriss, and go to 4hourworkweek.com. And he was interviewing Derek Sievers. And if you don't know who Derek is, that's okay, because I didn't know who he was either until I listened to the podcast. Turns out he is a really interesting dude who spent 10 years working at a circus, first as a musician and then ultimately as like a master of ceremonies. And so he talked about this new project that he's working on called Now, Now, Now. And so I just set up my Now, 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 my Now page on SalesQualia.com. So if you go to SalesQualia, QUALIA.com /now, and what I'll be doing there on a daily basis is posting all of the stuff I'm doing right now. So on a day-to-day basis, just letting people know what it is that I'm working on a day-to-day basis. So I'm just looking at the page right now and refreshing it because I just updated it. And today's work that I'm doing right now is recording. Earlier today, recorded our first, not our first, but our next weekly episode for the Startup Selling Podcast. So if you haven't come across the Startup Selling Podcast before, that's a podcast that I do. And so Robert Wharton and I, who is one of my colleagues here at SalesQualia, we riffed for about almost an hour, actually, talking about the next topic on the podcast, which was budgets. So here we are at the end of this year in 2016. And as I work with startups, a big question that I get is, hey, how do I get into the budget cycle for these big enterprises that I'm selling to? And it turns out that if you want to get into the big budget cycle, then you need to be having those budget conversations back in August and September. And here it is December, you're actually a little bit too late to get into the 2016 budget, at least from a kind of like a line item standpoint as like a big spend. And so what we did is we tackled this topic and said, okay, so if I'm a startup and I am going to look at getting into the big budget cycle for 2017, what do I have to do now? And so it turns out between now and August of 2016, there's lots and lots of stuff that you need to do, including setting up pilot programs, building relationships with senior executives, setting up quarterly reviews with your current customers, asking them what it would take to become a bigger vendor. And so we talked about all of those different things, very, very tactical. So I'm really happy with that podcast episode and excited that we got yet another one recorded. So as we build up the podcast, then it's another way to get the message out and share some of the knowledge that we want to share here at SalesQualia with people like you. So that was the first thing that I was working on today from a now standpoint. The next thing I was just working on, I just finished listening to a webinar about live streaming. So that's what I'm doing right now is live streaming. And so I got a little motivated and figured I would just go ahead and do my first live streaming here on Google Hangouts through YouTube because it seemed like the easiest and most painless way for me to get started. And so the idea of live streaming, I'm thinking about a couple of different options to do this in 2017 or 2016. One of the things that we want to do is have a, if not weekly, at least every other week, we want to have a live session with startups, with entrepreneurs, with sales folks where they can interact with me, whether it's here on video or via webinar, and basically have them ask us their most burning sales questions. So it seems like every time I come across a startup entrepreneur, startup CEO, or early stage team, they always have like tons of questions about how to build their sales process, what they should do with a client, what they should do about prospecting, what should go into an email. They've got a list of contacts that they've developed over the course of the last couple of weeks in terms of like research. And so everybody's got these different questions, and it's kind of like everyone has it on the daily basis. They have like one burning sales question, like, hey, I got to have this one question answered because I need to take this one action. And so starting in next year, I want to have an opportunity to answer those questions for the startup crowd. And so we're going to look at ways that we can set up a live stream like this where people can ask questions, I can answer them, at least give them some perspective, give them some ideas, and then hopefully they can take those ideas and implement those for their business. So that was the second thing that I was working on now. The third thing that I'm working on now, I'm going through the list, is earlier today I wrapped up some of the work that we did from yesterday's live virtual workshop. So we did a workshop that was about 3 hours long for a couple of folks that signed up, and the topic of the workshop was build your 2016 sales plan. And so through the course of that workshop over the 3 hours, we kind of walk through what I call the Q framework, and it's kind of the foundation of what we do here at SalesQualia is teach startups. And let me just give you a quick look at that if I can pull it out of my folder. Here it is. This is my hacked together PowerPoint as I'm doing live stream here. So here it is. So the Q framework. Let me pull it up to. So the Q framework is a sales framework that I developed, and the reason it's called the Q framework is that we use questions to qualify and quantify your sales process. And so those questions are really just they seem like very basic questions, but it turns out that as I work with startups that most companies haven't really thought about the importance of these questions and how they relate to their sales process, whether it's everything from finding the target customers to actually converting them and closing them and bringing them in as clients themselves. And so we did this 3-hour workshop yesterday on how to build your sales process, and a good chunk of the time was spent walking through these first 4 questions, which are what, who, why, and how. That's something I talk about over and over and over. It's kind of my crusade, if you will, that if I can get startups to understand that these 4 questions, if they can answer these 4 questions, then they will have a sales process. So the first question, what, means what problem are you solving? So not what does your product do, not what, where was it built, how was it built, what platform is it on, what technology does it use, specifically what problem are you solving with your product, with your service, with your company. And so it turns out a lot of startups are unclear, or at least in their mind they might know, they're not very clear in terms of accurately describing that problem from the customer's standpoint. And so understanding how to articulate that problem yourself as a startup CEO, as a company founder, as an early stage company salesperson, and then being able to discuss that problem with your target customers so that they understand and trust that, hey, these people actually really understand my problems and they're out to solve it. So that's the first question. The second question is who. So who are the target industries and customers? What are the segments of customers that you're going after? So if you have a technology where you're thinking like, hey, it can be used by everybody, that's actually a problem. What you want is a very, very focused view of a specific industry and even a segment of customers or companies within that industry that are your primary targets. So that's the first half of who. The other half of who, which I'll show here, so that's the target industries. The second who are the buyer types. So these are the individuals, the people. Who are the people that you need to be selling to? Is it the SVP, the Senior Vice President of Operations? Is it the Director of IT? Who are the different people within an organization? You're all going to influence that decision. Who's the economic buyer, the technical buyer, the user buyer, the product champion? These are all people that we talk about and identify within a sales opportunity. So that was the second question that we talked through and as part of this workshop, is who are you selling to? The third question is why. So why would somebody buy your product? And what we're talking about here is a value proposition. And specifically, how do you enumerate for people specifically why they would buy your product? Meaning that, do you increase revenue by X% or by X dollars? Does your product decrease cost? Does it increase efficiency? Does it decrease risk? How do you discuss the value proposition using numbers so that you can be specific to the right people to solve the problems? So it's kind of a stack here that works up. So once you know the problem you're solving, the segments of customers you're targeting, the people within those organizations that you need to talk with and sell to, you need to then be able to articulate your value proposition to each of those buyers in a way that makes sense to them, that makes them compelled to buy because they see the return on investment. And then the fourth question is just how, meaning how do they buy from you? How do your customers buy from you? What is the plan from the point they say, hey, this looks awesome, let's sign a contract? You need to be able to give your customers a very clear view of the future so that they know exactly what happens the first day, the first week, the first month, what happens on the rollout day by day on the first week. How do you train? How do you implement? What are your success metrics? So if you're running a pilot program, for example, with a new customer, how do you know you're being successful? How do you know that for you, that once you deliver that success, then it makes it really easy to make a case to go ask for a lot more budget money down the road. So these were kind of the tenets of the workshop that we covered, is the what, the who, the why, the how. And so I was kind of wrapping up, again, going back to why we're talking about this, wrapping up on the now. The things I'm working on now is just kind of wrapping up that workshop, sending out links to the recordings, workbooks, worksheets, send an additional recording to the folks that attended the workshop about prospecting. So giving really specific tips in this 30-minute video on how to prospect, how I prospect using LinkedIn, how I use email, those sorts of things. And then I also gave a little gift to the folks that attended, which are copies of my books, actually, which are a little self-promotion here. So Startup Selling was my first book, and then 52 Sales Questions Answered. So just making sure that the folks that attended the workshop got everything out of the time together. So that was the third thing that I was working on in terms of a now. And the fourth thing, the fourth part of my day today, and starting in 8 minutes now, I have first of 2 strategy calls with startup selling clients. So as part of the startup selling program that I run, which is a 3-month, very intensive program to help startups build their sales process, what I do on a regular basis with the folks that are part of that program is a specific one-on-one strategy call. So I usually do this every few weeks. We don't do it every week. We don't do it every day. The idea of the strategy call is to say, look, over the course of these 3 months, we have these success metrics. So once you start working with me in this program, in 3 months' time, let's figure out exactly what you're going to get out of this, whether it's revenue, customers, beta customers, pilots, whatever. The purpose of these strategy calls is to make sure that the clients are getting the most out of their investment and time with me, and that I'm able to make sure that they are focused on the right activities so that they are reaching those goals after that 3-month period. And so the strategy call is designed to make sure that we're not just keeping busy with things, but we're actually advancing the business. So the difference between busyness and business. So those are the 4 things that I'm working on today. So big day, as you can see, and that's actually a pretty normal day for me, is having all of these different things going on sequentially, one after the other, so that I can get the most out of each and every day. So that's it for now. That's my first live stream. I don't think anybody was watching as we go, but that's okay. If anything, now I've got this recorded, and I'll keep working on these live streams each and every day, and I'll continue to post these. And over time, perhaps some more folks will join and watch me talk about what I'm doing today. It's kind of a fun thing to do midway through the day. I feel good about the stuff I've already done, and I'm optimistic about the stuff that's coming ahead, especially these 2 strategy calls. Always love doing those calls with clients and learning about how they're learning, what I can do to help that learning. And so, in fact, now I'm down to 6 minutes before that first strategy call, so I need to sign off. So Scott Sambucci here, signing off my first live stream. If you made it this far, really appreciate it. And if you didn't make it this far, and even if you clicked on the link and you're not seeing me tell you this, I really appreciate at least trying to watch. So look for my next live stream really soon, and have a good afternoon. See ya.